kind of want to go back to where we were talking about the different recommendations and how they were closed. But before we do that, let me ask a couple other questions. Is CERT being the Containment Emergency Response Team? Do you know what bureau they are currently under? Are they under OSB or PSB?
So they're in the special operations. We requested, or we suggested in a recommendation, that they get moved to the protective operations unit.
Okay, so they're still under Operations Services Bureau.
Yes, sir.
And I assume you're aware that the recommendation from the June 2021 flash report was that the U.S. Capitol Police IG, your predecessor, recommended that they be moved from Operations Service Bureau to the Protective Service Bureau. And per the QFRs from Chief Manger's hearing, you have marked this recommendation as complete as of April 18th, 2023. We have a copy, and I've seen the department's proposed reorganizational chart, and it still has that CERT remains under OSB. Now, this is, it's currently in OSB. It's proposed to remain in OSB, but yet that recommendation has been closed as if it was completed. So the concern that we have is that, are the goalposts being moved to make it easier for the department to appear to be completing recommendations than actually ensuring that it's being held at a higher standard? Are we just seeing maybe easing up the recommendations just to be able to close them out? I mean,
no, I don't think so. In the case of the CERT team, one of the big fundamental issues was communication. When protective operations needed CERT present, or dignitary protection, they would show up, 12 strong. The only way they were rolling, I don't want to get into numbers, but they would roll in a full team fashion. Because they reported to the Special Operations Bureau, protective ops didn't get a lot of their requests fulfilled. So it became an ongoing issue. So I come from the standpoint that communication issues in an organization need to be dealt with through the chain of command, as opposed to just arbitrarily grabbing the whole unit and moving it to save yourself some communication issues. Now, in my conversations with the department, they are moving towards more of a response fashion, counter-assault fashion for the protective ops. They're actually, I don't want to get into it here, but some of the things they're doing to support protective operations, they still have that responsibility of the campus, campus. So we want to make sure we don't take away their effectiveness on the campus as well. So I think we hit a middle ground. I don't think we moved the goalpost. We got a really good middle ground to build upon.
So short answer being, you didn't fully agree with the recommendation from Mr. Bolton.
That's fair.
So it kind of takes me back to our previous question. If that recommendation is marked as complete but modified, how do we know that when we look at it as a committee, and we're looking at, okay, they've completed this, and then we find out that it wasn't completed. So it really only matters if they're implemented the way that it was recommended, if you're going to close that recommendation. Otherwise, the recommendation has to be modified. Otherwise, we're undermining the spirit of the recommendation, really, if you want to use that term. So that's one of the things that I think we need to work on to improve communication between your office and the committee and the public, is what is really being done. So we may have to go back and review all the recommendations as Ms. Torres requested. Would appreciate a list of those recommendations that were completed less than 100% than the way that the recommendation was made, if that's a fair way of putting it.
That's exactly right, and we have that. We track that information. Be happy to provide it.
So since the inception of the U.S. Capitol Police OIG in 2007, the OIG has made, on an average, 36 recommendations per fiscal year. Of course, in 2021, there was 104, so that's kind of an exception there. With only 2 months left in 2023, your tenure has yielded only 2 recommendations. Look, I'm not one that we should just be making recommendations for making recommendations, and I don't think that we do that just for the sake of, hey, we're outputting product here. But it does bring to question why such a disparity when on average there were 36 recommendations per year and now we've only had 2.
So I want meaningful recommendations. We just did 103 just for J4. You know, makes you wonder what are the other areas this office looked at all these years before. We've touched on everything, as we said, training, recruitment, the equipment, communication. We touched almost every facet of the agency. We actually have quite a few reports in progress right now. Some are coming out with some recommendations, so I think that number is going to increase a significant amount here in the short term. But no, we've got a lot of projects going on, and I think we're, of course, risk-based, so we're looking at the highest priority areas.
Well, I appreciate that. Just for correction, you said J4. I think you meant J6.
I'm sorry, J6.
Yeah, just want to make sure for the record that
my apologies.
It was correct. So, and as I said, we're not looking for just doing busy work to do busy work, right? And we want to make sure that what we do is good and proper. Who on your team is involved in determining if a recommendation has been completed?
Well, ultimately, it'd be my responsibility, but I do that in coordination with my team.
Okay.
My number
so
2.
There's not really a process other than just everyone agreeing that, yeah, this is making a recommendation to you and you.
Well, it's not haphazard. We actually evaluate all the aspects or elements of the recommendation, the risk associated with it. We determine back and forth with the department audit coordinator any materials that we need, and then we'll sit around and determine if that risk has been neutralized or, are they putting in place a compensating control that will achieve that.
General idea, how many are on this team?
How many are on?
That you work with about closing, how many people, just a ballpark figure?
Oh, on the team?
Yes.
Well, my audit director and could be the auditor that did it, so maybe just 2.
Okay.
Maybe 3. Maybe
So,
our coordinator in the office as well.
Per se, you're going to look at closing out a recommendation. Is it always unanimous, or do you occasionally have dissenters?
Well, I open it up. Everybody has outstanding backgrounds in audit, and blessed to have a very professional team, experienced team. So I take into account the guidance they provide. So I think we have 7 where we, as we say, spirit of, but some of them they're performing a function, an intelligence fusion center function. They were just waiting for furniture. The function was being done. They were waiting for final build out. So as long as they're able to furnish information that they're actually performing the function, I'm not overly concerned about what room number they sit in to do it.
Right.
So that's an example of one of the 7.
So there may be times that one of the team members dissents, but you still feel that has enough been done. I mean, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Just trying to get an understanding. It's not always unanimous.
I don't know. I can't remember a time where we had any serious difference in concluding that the controls were adequate. I mean, could it happen? Sure.
Okay.
Perhaps with the CERT team issue,
yeah.
But having 33 years of law enforcement, having dealt with counter assault and CERT and all that, I had a pretty good feeling that the homogenized version that they were putting in place was sufficient for what they were trying to get at.
Just trying to get an idea because, you're talking to a body who normally never has anything we have unanimity on. So, but just trying to get an idea. So the moment's come. Last question. Do you, and we've talked about this in private. We see that the makeup of your office and the process is out of the norm of what you would see in most inspector generals, is that you report to the very people that have the power to terminate you, right? That's a conflict of interest in our mind and within a lot of inspector generals. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot because I understand the situation. And you may not be able to answer this, and that's fine. But let me put it this way. Do you feel that there are times, not necessarily in yours, but when an inspector general, and being hypothetical, but we all know what I'm talking about, if an inspector general is responsible for investigating the very entity that has the power to hire and fire, does that not create some level of conflict?
So it's an ongoing challenge. In Florida, I had 3 IG posts. 2 of them were secretaries of an agency appointed by a governor. 1 was an elected official. In all 3 of those occasions, I was reporting to 1 person who paid my check, who provided me administrative HR support, training, et cetera. That was a lot less independent than how I feel it is now, where I now report to 3 people who have to unanimously decide to hire or fire, rather than just 1 person. So it's an ongoing challenge in the IG community to achieve that, utopia, but I think it's a pretty good, from where I'm sitting, my relationship with the board is a better, stronger, more independent relationship than if I were to have just reported to 1 individual.
Okay, I appreciate that, and it may be better, but I don't think it's best. And so we'll be working. We appreciate the work that you're doing. We appreciate you being here, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. Before we adjourn, I also want to mention the good work that was done by Ms. Torres and the minority side relating to the psychological evaluation that was recently revealed, and we really appreciate work that you will put into investigating that as well. Again, I'd like to thank you for being here and for joining us today. Members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for you, and we ask that you please respond to those questions in writing. Yes, without objection, each member will have 5 legislative days to insert additional material into the record or to revise and extend their remarks. If there's no further business, I thank the members for their participation. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.